KISN LP, Portland, Rich Patterson here. I am so excited about this that I haven't been able to sleep for the last week. I am being joined this hour by the one, the only, you know him, you love him, Dean Torrence of Jan and Dean fame. Jan and Dean, legends that should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but we'll get to that a little bit later. Dean, thank you very much for your time this afternoon.
Hey, Rich. Absolutely my pleasure.
And Dean is the author of a great book called Surf City, the Jan and Dean Story. It's one of those that you pick up, you just can't put down. And the way you've written this book, Dean, it's like you're actually talking to the person reading it. It's in a very conversational, very funny way that you've done this. So kudos to you for that.
Hey, thanks. Luckily, the publisher did understand that I wasn't a writer up front. I told them I don't write. They chased me down, by the way. I wasn't out looking for a deal at all. And a publisher happened to call me, and I thought, geez, I don't even have to chase somebody or make up something. And these people really want to put something out. But on the other hand, I did make it clear that I wasn't a writer, that I did tell pretty good stories. So I was going to write it kind of like, as you just pointed out, like it's a conversation. So therefore, it has that kind of quality. And
it's
like that.
Very great stories in here. Some things that we'll touch on. I don't want to touch on everything because we want people to buy the book. There are great...
Well, I mean, it's still got nice pictures in it and stuff.
Well, this one right here, I don't know if you can see the one of you and Jan back. Looks like about 1964. That is a great one. It's black and white, but it's still great. That's nice. Hey, let's start at the beginning. How did Jan and Dean become Jan and Dean?
Actually, very much by accident. We just happened to have sports lockers next to one another. We were both on our high school football team. And it was a while ago. This is the late 50s. And, of course, the music of the day was doo-wop. So when kind of after practice, and all the guys would be in the shower rooms, taking showers, getting ready to go home, and maybe do some studying, maybe not. But, you know, it was after practice. We were feeling good, and showers always felt good. And just spontaneously, somebody would always start singing one of those doo-wop songs that were popular. And then, of course, then another person would chime in and do a part, because they all had multiple vocal parts. And next thing you know, you had a group of 8 to 10 guys all singing doo-wop in this wonderful echo that the old shower rooms with all that old tile used to get. As a matter of fact, you probably know, echo chambers were usually made out of those kinds of tiles.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we didn't know that. All we knew is that we were singing songs that we liked and we enjoyed, and damn, it sounded good. And it was mostly due to that great echo.
And so was it Jan that had the tape recorder, and you guys were just kind of futzing around and just started playing around, doing stuff, and it evolved from there?
Well, you know, football seasons come to an end, and ours did. And then we got kicked out of the sports locker room because I guess the track team was coming in, or baseball, or whatever it was, the next sport. And we had no place to go sing. So Jan happened to mention that he had a tape recorder, actually had 2 of them. Jan came from a very wealthy family, a Bel Air family, and his dad had cleaned out a garage and then made a playroom. And then that playroom became kind of our music room. Jan's dad also worked for Howard Hughes. Oh. And Howard Hughes, of course, had all the boy toys. And at one point, he was upgrading his sound systems, and he had a couple of tape machines that he wasn't ever going to use again because he had state-of-the-art new stuff. So he knew that Jan's dad had a son that enjoyed doing music, so Howard Hughes gave Mr. Barry 2 home Ampex tape recorders, but they were reel-to-reel and really, really nice. And that's how we started, because we had no idea what the heck we sounded like. Well, we thought we sounded pretty damn good in that shower room, so it was a big surprise when we actually heard ourselves on tape. We weren't as good as we thought. But Jan actually figured out, since he had 2 tape recorders, he figured out how to do the vocal input into one machine and then run it to the second machine kind of on a delay. So he kind of got one of those slap echoes. It sounds like an echo, but it's not really. It's just a delay.
So he started producing then at a very early age. That producing bug was there early on. Now, the one question that I have always wanted the answer to, and I've never been able to get a definitive answer on this. The first big hit that Jan was involved in was Jenny Lee. The label says Jan and Arnie Ginsberg, who you guys were a trio. The question is, did you sing on Jenny Lee or did you not sing on Jenny Lee?
I wanted to hear myself on there as a young person. No, actually, we worked on that song, when I graduated from high school. I was scheduled to go into the Army, into the reserve program, so that I could get in and out in 6 months, and I wasn't going to wait around to be drafted for 2 or 3 years. So I had committed to going into the Army for 6 months. But right about that same time, I'm up messing around with Jan and others. We still had some of the same guys from the locker room. It seemed as though we always had at least 4 to 5 people and sometimes more. We were a vocal group. And we worked on Jenny Lee as a vocal group. And, of course, right at that same time when we were finally getting the song to sound pretty good, I had to leave. Next I knew, I'm up in the Army, and I went in with a bunch of guys from high school who also were aware of the song. And one morning, very early, as you would imagine in the Army, one of my buddies ran up to me with a little portable radio and said, "Listen to this." And, man, I was just blown away. There's Jenny Lee on the radio. So, I'm listening to it, and it does have some background parts to it. But mostly 2 voices up front, so I kind of thought my background vocal was on there. But, once I actually really heard it clearly, I realized that wasn't a vocal that I had done. So at the end of the record, this jockey says that's a new big hit out of L.A. called Jenny Lee. I knew that. And I'm expecting him to say the Barons, because that was the name of our vocal group at the time that I left. And he says, Jan and Arnie. And I went, what?
Oh.
You can imagine.
And you're trying to convince are you trying to convince your buddies there that is me? Yeah.
Well, they thought it was because they knew I had worked on it. And they wouldn't know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was hard to hear, and it was just a little cheap little radio. I hoped it was me. Of course, we had a busy day. You have busy days in your Army, and I think after we were done and after dinner, I went to a payphone and called Jan. And, we beat around the bush a little bit, and I finally said, hey, I heard the song on the radio. And he goes, oh, yeah, we finished it. I said, I noticed. And I said, well, it's by Jan and Arnie. He said, well, it is by Jan and Arnie, just Arnie and I sang it. And you weren't here. I called you, and your mom said that you were in the Army. So, sorry about that. You're welcome to come up and listen to us work on the next record. Oh, geez, thanks.
KISN, 1959, Jan and Arnie with Jenny Lee. Rich Patterson here, joined this hour by Dean Torrence of Jan and Dean, author of a brand new book called Surf City, the Jan and Dean story. It's Thanksgiving weekend, lots of shopping going on. If you know somebody who is a huge Jan and Dean fan, you got to get them this book. It is fantastic. Coming up next, Dean, we are going to be talking about 1964, which was a huge, huge year for Jan and Dean. Coming up next on Kisn.
The Kisn Good Guys would like to thank AProfitableDay.com for helping us bring real oldies back to the radio. AProfitableDay.com of Portland helps local businesses build a 5-star reputation with videos. Businesses reach new customers through reputation marketing with targeted video advertising on YouTube and Facebook. A Profitable Day is on the web at AProfitableDay.com.
31 flavors, 31 years, around the bend, summertime appears. When it's time for having fun, 31 flavors is the one. Dean, we've been singing for 31 years now.
Let's see, Jan. That's 1 year for each flavor of Baskin-Robbins ice cream.
That's right.
Good thing they just have 31 flavors.
Now there's more to love us for. America's favorite ice cream store.
The Kisn Good Guys would like to welcome Dina Cola's Restaurant as a real oldies supporter. For a taste of Italian cuisine, Dina Cola's is located at 3520 Southeast Powell. They've been serving Portlanders since 1978. Meals are prepared from original family recipes, including spaghetti, ravioli, lasagna, many varieties of pizza, and house specialties such as chicken cacciatore. Dina Cola's is open Sundays through Thursdays from 4 to 9 p.m. and Fridays and Saturdays from 4 to 10 p.m. Located on Southeast Powell Boulevard near 35th Avenue. They're on the web at DENICOLAS, ItalianDining.com.
We are talking with Dean Torrence of Jan and Dean, the author of a brand new book called Surf City, the Jan and Dean story. Dean, Jan and Dean are pretty much connected with the Beach Boys, always have been, always will be. When you mention one, the other comes to mind. Now, is it true, though, that the Beach Boys, when they started recording, that they were copying the Jan and Dean sound, the bumps and everything in songs like Heart and Soul in Tennessee?
Well, yes, but those songs were like that. But they were well aware of us, and they were inspired because we were from the West Coast, and most of the artists that were on the radio at the time were mostly from the East Coast. The major part of the record business was firmly implanted on the East Coast, so very few artists were coming out of the West Coast. So again, they were listening to us mostly because we were all from Southern Cal. Mike Love did the foreword to my book, and he actually admits to copying us. I have it in writing.
Wow.
You do too there.
So it is true.
Oh, yeah. I'm not saying that's any big deal because, again, we were all singing kind of doo-wop-y songs, and it kind of all sounded alike anyway.
But you guys got a real friendship going to the point to where Brian Wilson was working with Jan, and it was up to Brian who basically gave you guys your biggest hit in Surf City, which hit #1 in the summer of '63. What are your memories about how that song kind of came about? Any special memories about the recording of it, how Brian and Jan and everybody, you had some part to do with changing the lyrics as well. Can you kind of give us your memories of that?
We had happened to be in the studio together, mainly because we asked them to come hang with us. And Jan and I were going to record Surfin' and Surfin' Safari because we had just had a hit, Linda. Is that a song you play?
Yes. Hey, here on Kisn, I believe we play about 17 Jan and Dean songs.
I didn't even know there was. We have 17.
I mean, we
That's
go back.
A lot.
Yeah, I mean, hey.
Yeah,
hey,
but you told me you played Frosty the Snowman. I don't consider that a song.
Well, okay, 16 or 17 then.
Okay.
We only play Frosty the Snowman. We'll do that next month. But we do. If people who are our regular listeners to Kisn, they'll hear Heart and Soul. They'll hear Tennessee. They'll hear Baby Talk.
Oh, my gosh.
I Found a Girl all over the world. If it was a top 40 hit, we play it here on Kisn. And also, being on the West Coast, Jan and Dean were huge in the Northwest. So that is the reason why we do that. So back to the Surf City story.
Okay, so we were in the studio. We were making an LP. You remember those?
Mm-hmm.
And we had just had the hit Linda. So, of course, then we were given a budget to record an LP. So now we got to do 11 more songs, which was always a pain. We were full-time college students, so we didn't really have a whole lot of time to record and write and all that. So we thought, we had worked with the Beach Boys a couple of times. We'd gotten along really well. We enjoyed being with them because we were back to how we were going to record, which was with other people. We honestly didn't want to be a duo. We wanted to be in a vocal group. Well, now we have these new buddies. They're all great vocalists, and now we are in that vocal group we always wanted to be in. So we were going to record this LP. Linda would be the title, of course, and then there was only 2 surf songs ever written up to this point. So we asked Brian if he minded if we re-recorded both Surf and Safari and put it on our Linda album. Now, those songs had already been on the charts, and it was no longer selling. It was just those songs of that era would stay on the radio for maybe 2 to 3 months, and then you'd never hear them again. So he didn't mind. He was a songwriter, so he was thrilled that we wanted to re-record those 2 songs, because we were going to call the Linda LP Jan and Dean Take Linda Surfing,
Mm-hmm.
which would be a hint to our fans, kind of the new direction we were going to go in, which is doing songs about the Southern California beach culture or car culture, which was a big leap from kind of doing our teen idol songs, doo-wop songs. So we were pretty excited about heading in this new direction. The only problem was there was only 2 surf songs ever written. So that does make for a whole LP, you understand.
Makes it tough.
Linda and 2 surf songs. I don't know. We filled it up with some other stuff that probably didn't mean anything. But the songs we were the most excited about were, of course, re-recording Surf and Safari with our buddies who we invited to the studio and said we would pay them like we would studio musicians to play the tracks, and if they wanted to help us do the vocals like we had done on stage before, they were more than welcome to help us do the vocals, which, of course, they wanted to do that. And the records came out really, really good. So it was kind of after that recording session, after we knocked out those 2 songs, that Brian Wilson said, hey, do you want to hear our follow-up to Surf and Safari? Oh, of course, sure. So he sits down at the piano and he starts playing this song that sounded a lot like a Chuck Berry record, but he changed the words. And, we were blown away. I mean, obviously it was a great song. So, what do you call that thing? And he said, Surfing USA. We said, oh. Well, we had to point out to him that he took somebody else's melody, being Chuck Berry, Sweet Little 16, I think. Am I right?
Yes. Yep.
You guys know all about that stuff.
Of course. You do too, Dean. You're just
I kind of do.
You're just trying to make me look good.
I'm getting to that age, short-term memory loss. But that's long-term memory, so I'll probably be okay. So at Sweet Little 16, we tell him that, Brian's only really been in the business a little over a year to this point. So us being the older guys by a couple of years, we said, Brian, you really can't do that. That's not legal. You can't just take somebody else's melody and just add in your own words. He said his dad told him it was okay. Oh. But, Brian, doesn't your dad work in a machine shop? Well, yeah. I said, well, okay, I don't think he really knows, because we know for a fact you can't do that. I mean, we loved the song. We thought the song was so darn good. So we're trying to talk him out of it, because we're pressing upon him that he couldn't do it, and that we knew Chuck Berry. We probably even said, look, I got his phone number right here in my little phone book. But we did tell him we knew Chuck, who we did know, and we said we could call him and then just explain what we wanted to do, and then Chuck would probably say it was okay. Again, that was a song he'd done a couple of years before, and you'd probably have to split some of the writing with him and maybe even some publishing but as long as you worked it out ahead of time, he'd probably think that was fine. If you just do this without asking him, you're going to be in real deep trouble. Well, Brian insisted that his dad said it was okay. So, all right. But he said, look, if you're looking for another surf song, an original surf song, he said, I have another one that was similar to Surfing USA, so I'm not going to do both of them. I'll do one or the other. And he was really, really excited about finishing Surfing USA, and he lost interest in this other song. So we said, okay, well, what's that song? I mean, he starts playing the piano, and he said something about opens with 2 girls for every boy, and then he had some words, and he had the whole melody figured out. We said, shoot, that's pretty okay, too. But then we got to be, we said, look, Brian, you wrote Surf City here, although it's not finished, and you're letting us finish it. That's very nice. But our suggestion is you finish Surf City, or we'll even help you finish Surf City, because that song you really did write, and you'll be able to get the publishing and the writing on that. Where Surfing USA, you're not going to be able to. We gave it one more shot. He said no, he was going to stick with Surfing USA, but we could take Surf City. So, gee, thanks. Love it. And we went off and cut a track, and next thing you know, it's number 1.
And you changed some of the lyrics in there, too, from the specifics escape me, but there were some of the lyrics you said, this doesn't make sense if you're driving this kind of a car.
Well, he originally wrote, I bought a 33 panel truck. I call it my Woody. It's not very cheery. It's an oldie but a goodie. Didn't change any of that. It ain't got a heater or a radio, but it still gets me where I want to go. So now I'm looking at it. We always pass lyrics around and stuff and let everybody look at it and tweak it if they wanted. So I pointed out to Brian, I said, well, first of all, I don't think they made a Ford Woody in 1933. I wasn't aware of it, but I said I am aware of a 32 or a 34. And so let's pick one of those. And I think he was already starting to work on Little Deuce Coupe, which is a 32. So he said, well, okay, I said, well, let's do 34. So, okay. So I wrote in 34. Then the panel truck, I said, Brian, a panel truck has a solid side to it. It's not wood. It's a truck. I mean, it doesn't have windows except for the front window and just the driver's window. But it's not a Woody. A Woody is a station wagon. It's a whole 2 different kinds of vehicles here. So my suggestion was it should be a 34 wagon, and I call it a Woody. He said, okay, that's okay. So I crossed out panel truck. Then it got down to it ain't got a heater or a radio. So I pointed out to Brian, look, most of our songs in that era were played on the radio in a car. Matter of fact, we even used to mix songs through a small speaker so we make sure that they sounded good in a car radio. We're in the music business. We want people to listen to the radio in their car. So, this car cannot be without a radio. And heater didn't really care about. But I said, why don't we make it ain't got a back seat, because that's how you get the board in, or a rear window. Rhymes with radio. And it's a rear window because you'd sometimes take the window out, too, because these are all longboards. They're all 14 feet long. That's an awful long piece of equipment to get in just a regular old car. So he goes, okay, whatever you say. So I crossed that out. Later, he says, there's 2 swinging girls for every guy. And I pointed out that surfers call their girlfriends honeys. So I said, why don't we do, there's 2 swinging honeys for every guy. And honey is a kind of a fun word to say. He didn't care. He thought that was fine. So I got my 2 cents worth in there. But that's writing about maybe a fourth of the song. And if I had gotten credit for that, which I didn't even think of at the time, probably could have put my kids through school.
It ended up being Jan Dean's only number 1 hit, but I have to say, my all-time favorite song. I'm not saying that because I'm talking to you, but Surf City is My all-time favorite song. Seriously. And matter of fact, we'll play it right here on Kisn. Jan and Dean, Surf City.
Two girls for every boy. I got a 34 wagon and we call it a Woody. Surf City, here we come. You know it's not very cheery, it's an oldie but a goodie. Surf City, here we come. Well, it ain't got a backseat or rear window, but it still gets me where I wanna go. City, here we come. You know they're either out surfing or they got a party throwing. Surf City, here we come. Yeah, there's new swinging honey for every kind. And all you gotta do is just blink your eye. Go to Surf City. Surf City. Surf City, here we come. I'll strap my board to my back and use to ride in my wetsuit. Surf City, here we come. And when I get to Surf City, I'll be shooting with girls and checking out the parties for a surfer girl. Surf City, Surf City.
KISN, Rich Patterson, honored to be joined by Dean Torrence of Jan and Dean, author of Surf City, the Jan and Dean story. If you go to Amazon.com and you look at the comments on there, the comments are universally fantastic on this book.
Thank you. It gave me goosebumps. I don't even know any of those people.
well, they know you.
Even though I paid them to do it.
And I think there are about 30 reviews or so, because the book hasn't been out that much. And I think they're all 5 stars except for one, and that's a 4 star. So
yeah, even that person said they liked it.
Exactly.
I'm not sure why it took off 1 point, but
maybe because there are no color pictures in the book.
Oh, gosh,
maybe that could be
maybe
it.
So.
Well, now 1964, that was the year of the big, huge British music invasion, and lots of people who were big hit makers in America, the hits dried up for them. But 64 seemed to be Jan and Dean's biggest year. You guys had 3 huge top 10 hits. There was Drag City, Dead Man's Curve, Little Old Lady from Pasadena, and then other classics like New Girl in School and Ride the Wild Surf and Sidewalk Surfing, all in 64. Not a bad year.
Not a bad year.
And then in October of that year, you and Jan hosted the first true rock and roll all-star concert, the T.A.M.I show. I mean, we're talking the Rolling Stones, James Brown in an amazing performance, Beach Boys, Supremes, Marvin Gaye, Chuck Berry, Jerry and the Pacemakers, and you guys. What are your memories of hosting and being part of that amazing concert?
Well, first of all, don't remember a whole lot because we were working, which was a good thing in one way, and in another way it wasn't. In other words, I think that was actually recorded over 2 nights.
I think it was. I think it was like October 27th and 28th. See, I read the book.
Just in case it messed up, I think. You had stuff to pull from either night. As you mentioned, we were the hosts of the show. So in between acts and stuff, we were getting new outfits because we kind of did bits, and so we had to change clothing and stuff. But we weren't able to hang with everybody backstage, which would have been a hell of a lot of fun. But we were kind of tied up learning our lines and making sure where we were supposed to be. But all in all, I mean, it was magic. It just was such a great show. As you pointed out, this probably was kind of a forerunner to maybe even,
like Monterey and Woodstock and all of those.
Mostly Woodstock.
Yeah.
Because those were kind of the very first live shows to have multiple artists on them, and then artists from maybe different music genres. I'd say this was pretty darn new and pretty cutting edge.
Have you gone back to watch the concert?
Oh, my God, yes.
And it's available on DVD. And if you have not seen this, the T.A.M.I show, it's an amazing concert. It's a must-see. And I'm sure these days it's been remixed and in HD and they've probably have cleaned it up so much, yes. So, but check that out. I'm sure that's available anywhere. Put it on your Christmas list along with Dean's book here.
And,
yes.
And you can find it on eBay and stuff, so it's not that hard to find. It's not all that expensive. And we have Dick Clark to thank for that. It was Dick Clark that was a huge fan of the show, even though he didn't have anything to do with it. But some 25, 30 years later, he was bound and determined to renegotiate all the rights for all those artists, because those contracts were written for a couple of years at the most. And then we just thought if it didn't happen in a couple of years, nobody was going to be interested. So he chased down all the acts and renegotiated contracts so everybody made some money on it. Then he spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more, again, as you pointed out, just remixing it and making sure that the visual quality of the show was up to newer standards, and packaged it, did a wonderful package. And that was all Dick Clark getting it done, because nobody else could have spent that kind of money and or that amount of time. Even just the legal bill for putting all that together was probably astronomical. But the product came out great.
And the theme song to the concert was pretty darn good, too.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Let's give a listen to that right now as well. They're all coming from all over the world, Jan and Dean on Kisn.
They're coming from all over the world. Hey, everybody, see 'em arriving, the greatest stars you'll ever see. Some are flying and some are driving from Liverpool to Tennessee. Chuck Berry's checking in from St. Louis. He's gonna see Maybelline in Memphis too. The representative from New York City is Leslie Gore. Now she sure looks pretty. Here they come from all over the world. Here they come all over the world. You know the guitar's grooving, so keep it moving. And come on, come on, come on. They're coming from all over the world. Can't you just hear everybody singing? The biggest sound you've ever heard. A clapping and a stomping while the guitar's screaming. You better go spread the word. Don't forget the Motor City sounds of the day. The Baby Lovin' Supremes and Marvin Gaye. The king of the blues, soulful James Brown. The Beach Boys singing now. I get around, you get around. I get around. Here they come. Here they come. You know the guitar's grooving, so keep it on moving. And come on, come on, come on. They're coming from all over the Those bad-looking guys with the moppy long hair, the Rolling Stones from Liverpool have gotta be there. Jerry and the Pacemakers, Billy J too, they're all gonna be here to sing for you. Here they come from all over the world. Here they come from all over the world. You know the guitar's grooving, so keep it all moving. And come on, come on, come on. From all over the world. 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 From all over the world.
That is the theme to the T.A.M.I show, the big concert from 1964 that we've been talking about. They're coming from all over the world. Rich Patterson here, joined by the legendary Dean Torrence of Jan and Dean, author of a brand new book called Surf City, The Jan and Dean Story. And once again, if you are a fan of Jan and Dean, or you know somebody that is a fan of Jan and Dean, you have got to get them this book. We are now officially into the holiday season, so you can go out, buy them this book for Christmas, and they will love you for it. Coming up next, we're going to be talking to Dean about 1966 and what could have been for Jan and Dean. Also, we are going to be touching on the movie Dead Man's Curve. More with Dean Torrence coming up next, right here on Kisn.
Support for real oldies on Kisn 95.1 comes from Grove Tech in Wood Village. A local family-owned business since 2006, Grove Tech specializes in a variety of firearm accessories, including swivels, slings, holsters, and more, for all types of firearms. Manufacturing firearm accessories that are proudly made in the USA and right here in Oregon. Their extensive product line catalog and a list of dealers is on the web at grovetech.com. That's GROVTEC.com. Grove Tech Firearm Accessories.
Here comes Jan and Dean.
Things go better with Coca-Cola. Things go better with Coca-Cola. Life is more fun when you're refreshed. And Coke refreshes you best. It's the refreshing. The little old ladies from Pasadena. Honey's from Ipanema. And rockers from Liverpool. Drinks from Coke 'cause they wanna be cool now. Things go better with Coke. The real life work puts extra fun in you and everything you do. Things go better with Coca-Cola. Things go better with Coke.
The Good Guys would like to thank Airport Auto Salvage of Portland for supporting Real Oldies on Kisn Radio. Airport Auto Salvage stocks used auto parts of all makes and models as far back as the 1980s. And if they don't have it in stock, they can get it from their nationwide parts locating service. Airport Auto Salvage, 4623 Northeast Buffalo Street in Portland. And they're also on the web at airportautosalvageportland.com. Airport Auto Salvage.
KISN, Rich Patterson with Dean Torrence of Jan and Dean, one of the true legends of rock and roll. Why you guys aren't in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I have no idea. It's an injustice. But then, you know, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is kind of a quirky thing anyhow. So, do you have any, does it make a big deal? I mean, the music should speak for itself. You don't need to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it's quite okay with me.
Now,
and especially it's in Cleveland. You know, I mean, who cares? Yeah. I don't mean to put down anybody from Cleveland, but Cleveland is Cleveland. You know, it ain't West LA or
it ain't Surf City.
No, and it should have been. You would think that a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame would at least be in one of the major cities where rock and roll came out of. But you know, so be it. I mean, somebody thinks it's a good idea.
I think it was because that's where Alan Freed got his start. That's what I'd heard anyhow.
Oh, that's okay. Well, I think they made that up, but
he also worked in New York. So, in early 1966, the Beach Boys had a huge hit. I believe it hit number 2 with a version of Barbara Ann. Now, if there was a truth in record labels law, in honesty, the label should have read the Beach Boys featuring Dean Torrence. How did that whole recording come about, and with you end up singing lead on that?
Well, I guess the backstory, which is pretty interesting, is that Brian Wilson was working on Pet Sounds, and as you know, that's one of the classic albums ever made. Even the Beatles say that it was right up there with Sgt. Pepper.
I think Pet Sounds actually inspired Sgt. Pepper, didn't it?
That's right. But Pet Sounds was a very, very time-consuming and complicated recording project. So Brian had been working on it for months, and of course the record company was calling him up every day going, where's the new record and where's the new single and all of this? And he said, I'm working on it. And after maybe a month or two of calling, they were getting kind of pissed off. So they were used to Little Deuce Coupe, or 409. What could take so long doing those? They had really no clue, particularly what he was doing, because he wouldn't allow them to come and listen. And at that point, he had enough power to be able to do that. All the record company cared about was getting some sort of product out there in the pipeline so that they would have some sales. They don't particularly care about art. They don't care about music. It's business. You got to get something out there and get it into the stores. So Brian was really frustrated that these people kept calling him and kept pushing him, and he finally came up with this idea. He had to give them something. So he figured, well, I do have this other idea that I've always wanted to do, which was record a bunch of songs live and in a party atmosphere. And maybe we could even do it at Brian's house. And he thought that that would work pretty well. And he envisioned, how it would be. And that would mean that you would have your family and friends and some of your musical buddies would all be involved. And it would be a really neat concept. And he thought that would be something that their fans would really love to hear, is Beach Boys having a party with their buddies. So he figured out that, well, if I do that, of course it's live, you could probably knock it out in maybe 2 nights and then edit it, master it, and put it out. And then once it's mastered and all that stuff, give it to the record company. That will keep them busy for at least another maybe 2 months to 3 months, and that would give him an extra 3 months of them not pestering him, and he can go back to working on that sounds. It was a great concept. He called us to tell us that's what he had in mind. He also wanted to know if we would participate and be involved in the recording. We said, of course. So we agreed to do it. He started making his notes on how to put the dang thing together. And meanwhile, we went to our record company to tell them that we were going to be on this Beach Boy project, and we were going to have our pictures on it, and it will be featured on it. And our record company said, okay, but you need to get a contract from them saying that they will do the same on a Janet Dean project. And we said, no, it's not how we work with them. We all trust one another, and when it's appropriate, they'll come do something with us. But we don't need it in writing, and nobody's going to be comfortable writing out a contract. They said, well, if our record company said if we did not get that contract from Beach Boys, then we were not permitted to be on their recording. Well, Janet just bought a nice big Bel Air home, and he had to make house payments, and the company actually said that they would hold up our royalties if we didn't do what they told us to do. So he decided it'd be best that we didn't do it, and he just figured that I, too, would agree to do that. Well, I didn't. Brian did figure out that it didn't really work in somebody's house very well, so he decided we can still have a party, but we'll actually be in a recording studio, so we have all the proper equipment and the microphones and all that. But we'll still have a party. So he had a studio lined up. We just happened to be in the studio right down the hall at the same time, and we were invited, of course, but he knew we weren't supposed to sing. Jan was busy, and we were recording something, and I had a little bit of a break where I wasn't going to sing anything or do anything for maybe half an hour or so. So I told Jan, well, I'm going to go down to the Beach Boys recording studio and just see what they're up to. He said, okay, but you need to be back here in 15 minutes, 20 minutes at most, and don't sing. I said, oh, don't worry, I won't sing. Yeah, you can count on me. I'll do the right thing. And I was out the door into their studio 3 minutes later, and within 5 minutes, I was singing.
Now, did they ask you what you wanted to sing, or did they just decide to sing Barbara Ann and you took the lead on it?
Oh, it was my idea, because I realized that I really had 15 minutes, probably, before Jan would come looking for me, and I didn't want him to catch me. So I just asked them, well, what era are you singing? And again, it was doo-wop, some of the older doo-wop stuff. And I said, look, I only have 15 minutes. We can't do anything that we have to practice. It's not supposed to sound like we were practiced anyway. So how about, and I thought of the simplest song that we could do where we wouldn't spend a lot of time learning. I said, what about Barbara Ann? Now, Jan and I had recorded it maybe 2 years previous, and it was just an album filler. It was never a single. But I always liked it. I always thought it sounded really, really good because they had so many really neat vocal parts. So they said, okay, Barbara Ann it is. And now I remember, because that version that you just got, the 50-year anniversary is like the first time I've heard it in 50 years. I didn't really remember all that went on before we sang the song. I heard the final version on their record back in 65, 66, and it was just a short version, and it was okay. There was a little bit longer version on the LP, but didn't have all of those false starts. And when I got this new version, God, it was such a kick. You can hear the evolution of the song. We did it twice, and I think each time we changed, I don't know, a key or changed some vocal parts in the two shorter takes. And I'm looking at my watch going, whatever we're doing here, we need to kind of finish it up because I've got to be back in my studio or Jan's going to come down here and catch me. So I said, okay. Well, the third time we were going to do it, Brian then said he wanted me to sing falsetto with him. Up until that point, I was singing background with the other guys. So all of a sudden, that was Brian's idea. I don't know why. And Brian said, come over here. You sing on my microphone with me. And then the other guys, you've heard it, right?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
And the other guys are kind of arguing and saying, no, he's fine over here with us. And all of it was fun, so I didn't really care. I would sing the background parts or double the falsetto with Brian. I didn't care, but I needed them to get to the dang song and get it done. So Brian won because, he was Brian. He's the producer. He's the oldest Wilson. So I got on his microphone, sang the lead with him, and the song, we finally make it all the way through the song. And then it was so much fun. We were having such a great time. By the time we got to the end and it stopped, we kind of went, God, that was fun. One more time. And then we just did the ending part again. And then that was so much fun that I think I did the third one where I said, well, just one more time. And we did it a second or third time. And by that time, I really needed to leave, so the music kind of ends and everybody's kind of laughing. And I'm waving goodbye to them. I'm heading out the door, and somebody says, thank you, Dean. I said, you're welcome, or waved and went back to the studio. Never thinking any of that would ever show up. Nobody knew my voice from Brian's voice anyway, so I figured I'll just say it wasn't me.
Well, let's listen to that long version that you're talking about right now with the false ends. Okay, yeah, you know what? Yeah. Here's Barbara Ann long version on Kissin'.
Hey, what is that, Bob? What is it on the verses? Hey, wait a second. You can talk with us, but you can't sing with us.
Oh, you can't sing with us?
I can talk
Nobody's
with you.
gonna tell.
I'll tell. It's probably worth the controversy.
Yeah. We have.
Hey,
all right,
we
have
got
on
enough.
this number. We're gonna have a secret singer.
We'll just cut some stuff and start talking.
Everybody write in and say who's the secret singer.
Nobody. Start the song. We had enough chatter to build up to it. Start it again. Let's make a real cooker now.
Real cooker.
I want that bass to really sound hip.
Where's the note?
Oh. You don't know how to sing ba ba. Black sheep, have you any wool? Oh, that was beautiful.
Ba 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 Baran. Ba 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 Baran. Oh ba 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 Baran. Ba 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 Baran. Ba 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 Baran. You got me rocking and a rolling, rocking and a reeling, ba Baran. Ba 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 Baran. Went to a dance, looking for romance. Saw Barbara Ann, so I thought I'd take a chance. Barbara Ann, Barbara Ann, Barbara Ann, Barbara Ann, Barbara Ann. You got me rocking and a rolling, rocking and a reeling, Barbara Ann, Barbara Ann, Barbara Ann, Barbara Ann.
getting bleed. He's really rocking. Really scratching it, isn't he? Oh, wet. Oh, no. Yeah. Soft. Tried Betty Lou. Tried Betty Lou. Tried Betty Lou, but I knew she wouldn't do it. Bobber and Bobber. Bobber and Bobber and Bobber. Bobber and you got me rocking and a rolling, rocking and a reeling. Bobber and Bobber. Bobber and Bobber. Bobber and Bobber. Bobber and rockin' and a rollin', rockin' and a reelin', bobber and bobber, bobber and bobber and bobber and bobber and bobber and yeah, bobber and bobber and bobber and bobber and you got me rockin' and rollin', rockin' and a reelin', bobber and bobber and yo, let's try that. You got me rockin' and a rollin', rockin' and a reelin', bobber and bobber and. Try one more time. You got me rockin' and a rollin', rockin' and a reelin', bobber and bobber and. Let's try it once more. One more time, with more artistic flavor. You got me rockin' and a rollin' and a reelin', bobber and. You got me rockin', you got me rollin', oh, bobber Pretty good. It's not bad.
Yeah, I love that version. KISN, the long version of the Beach Boys' Barbara Ann, featuring Dean Torrence on lead vocal there, along with Brian Wilson. Dean is with us here on KISN. Have a couple more questions for him. I told you, Dean, before we went on the air, I could go on for 3 hours asking questions.
Yeah, sure.
But, you know, we have things to do, and I'm sure you have things you have to do this afternoon, so we'll move on here. Now, going on to later on in 1966, it seemed like that was really poised to be a huge year for Jan and Dean, just because you guys had your first major motion picture going on. You had a deal to have a TV series on, I believe, ABC that fall, which would have debuted the same month as the Monkees. So think of all that rock and roll hijinks that we would have had.
Oh, boy.
But unfortunately, it really wasn't meant to be. Can you take us back to your memories of April 12th of 1966?
Let's see. For those that will read the book, there's a lot of detail to it, but the short version is, you mentioned the movie. We had a feature film with a bunch of really, really funny guys, a lot of the comedians that were in It's a Mad, Mad, Mad World. I mean, because that was one of our favorite movies. And we just happened to get most of those guys in a movie that we were doing. So we were really looking forward to doing the movie. And again, the long story's in the book, but comes up to the first day of shoot of that movie, and we got involved, of all things, in a train wreck, because there was a scene with a train, and the train didn't do what it was supposed to do. I mean, most trains don't. And like 17 people went to the hospital.
Wow.
And Jan compound fractured his leg, and he was in the hospital for at least 4 or 5 days, and had all the bones were all kind of all screwed together.
I heard a story about that accident, and Jan being a medical student, was he actually able to put a tourniquet on his own leg? Is that...
yeah, that's true.
That is true? Okay.
And then he looked at his leg, and again, being in med school, he knew he was going to bleed out if he stayed there. And we were out in the desert. I mean, it was out in the valley of L.A. We were out in the boonies, and he realized, I mean, Jan had an IQ of about 177, so he was pretty damn bright. He realized he was probably going to bleed out and could die if ambulances didn't get there pretty quickly, and he realized that it was going to be a while before ambulances found their way out to Chatsworth. So he told a couple of grips that were working on the train that the guys that obviously didn't get hurt, to help him get to any car that he could find. And there had been a train crossing, so there were at least 4 or 5 cars backed up waiting for the train to go by. And these guys helped Jan over to that bunch of cars. And, of course, they came to the very first one, and they opened up the door, and were going to just shove him in somebody's car. And Jan looked in, and it was some elderly people. And he said, no, they'll freak out. There happened to be a hot rod right in back of that car. He said, a teenager, a young person, he won't freak out. They hobbled him up there, and they opened up the door, and Jan said, I'm Jan Berry of Jan and Dean, and, I'm bleeding, and I need to get to the hospital. I'll pay to have your car redone if I bleed on it, blah, blah, blah. Kid said, come on in, and they scooted Jan in the car, and he'd been working on kind of a tourniquet, and then he was able to, while the guy was driving, close off some of the blood vessels that were really broken. And luckily, he got to the hospital and was in surgery, I'm going to guess, before the ambulances arrived at the crash scene and carted the other 16 people to the hospitals, different hospitals. So he very smartly took care of himself there. But, of course, that made the movie go away. Most everybody was in the hospital for a while, and then they just figured too much had happened, and they moved on to the next project. So meanwhile, his leg is healing. He was now in med school. He'd gone through pre-med at UCLA. Now he's in med school. And his leg is not strong enough to start first day of classes. So he contacts his med school, and they give him a leave of absence for at least a semester, because they figured he'd be okay after one semester's time. But meanwhile, the draft board gets word that he's not in med school, because when you're in med school, you get a deferment, so you can't be drafted, at least until after you get out of med school. So he had this deferment, but because he had taken a leave of absence, they pulled his deferment, and next thing you know, he's getting letters from the Army that he's supposed to report to the draft board ASAP. Well, he could still barely walk. How the hell am I going to get to the draft board? Somebody's going to have to drive me, and I'm going to walk in on crutches and go, how do you expect me to be in the Army? And I can barely walk. So I think he sent them a letter explaining, and even his doctor sent, and they kept saying they wanted to see him. I guess they wanted him to prove that his leg was messed up. So this one particular morning, we were living in that neat new Bel Air house he bought together, and I was heading off to school, and he was hobbling around, and he said, I got to go to the draft board, and he was kind of pissed off. But I said, but once I see you, once you walk in and, you lift up your pant leg, they'll see, some of the screws are still visible. But he was still angry that they didn't take his word for it and all that. And so I said, good luck, and I headed off and went to school. So he went down to the draft board, and I'm not sure exactly what happened, but there still was some sort of problem. And so he left the draft board, got in his Stingray, and he was heading to a meeting in Beverly Hills. And he was driving about probably 70 down some sort of side street in Beverly Hills. And somebody pulled out of a side street. He swerved to miss the car that had pulled in front of him, and he plowed his Stingray into the back of a pretty big truck. And that pretty much ended it. He sustained a lot of brain damage in that accident. His right side was kind of semi-paralyzed. He had to learn to read and write all over again. His IQ went from 177 to 68. It was a whole different world.
Once you heard about the accident and you saw the damage that was done to Jan, did you basically right then think, it's been a great ride, but that's it for Jan and Dean?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And there was some talk putting me together with some other guy at one point. And I just said, nah.
Well, Jan was such a unique talent, and you two had the chemistry together.
Had the chemistry, and from way back. I mean, even before we made records. So we would never be able to replicate that. And I just wasn't interested. I figured, how are you ever going to top what we just did? I mean, it was 1,000,000 to 1 shot
Well,
from the get-go, and then to try and replicate it, no way. So I was happy to say that was a great run, and I've been going to school, and I figured that's why I was going to school.
And Kitty Hawk Graphics was a company that you created in the 60s and 70s, and there's a lot of information on that in the book. I don't want to expose this, but you're kind of responsible for one of the classic logos in rock and roll history, and there's a great story in there as well about you designing some of the album covers for Steve Martin. So let's have that as a little teaser. So, okay, the classic Chicago logo. You had a big part of that, but the whole story, I love the way it's in the book. So we'll tease that one. Now,
that's pretty neat.
Moving.
And I'm not sure if I mentioned in the book the logo that most people remember, even right up there with the Chicago logo, is the Beach Boy logo, which is kind of I call it the neon. It's the neon Beach Boys that they've been using since 1977. I think I designed that.
Wow. There are some great stories about that in the book. I want to move on to a night that I remember very well, February 3rd, 1978. I believe it was a Friday night on CBS.
You would.
Friday night on CBS, there was a movie, a made-for-TV movie called Dead Man's Curve. How much involvement did you and Jan have in that, and were you happy with the final product?
Oh, I loved it. I wrote probably all the Jan and Dean stuff. Most all the info came from me. As I pointed out, Jan had brain damage, and it was hard for him to articulate or even remember most of that stuff. So 99% of it came from me. I did not write any of the scenes that had to do with his recovery. We got a screenwriter to do that actually, she did interviews with his doctors and with his therapists and all of that. So I didn't write those parts, but I wrote all the pertinent Jan and Dean scenes. So obviously I thought it was pretty accurate.
How much Hollywoodization did they do to it? Thank you. I just thought of that just on the spur of the moment here.
Wow.
How much of it?
You get the big bucks.
Yeah, you betcha. How much of it did they glamorize and maybe kind of played with the facts a little bit?
Oh, I didn't think of that movie being glamorized at all.
It's one of the rare movies, a kind of a biographical movie, where things were actually true to life and they didn't try and fudge with the facts at all.
Well, I told the producers from the get-go that, because they wanted a screenwriter, and I said, look, we don't need a screenwriter. It's already been written. I mean, all of these stories are already there. You don't have to make them up. These stories are better than anything you guys could ever make up. So that all the stories were true. What they did do on occasion is take 2 or 3 stories and kind of meld them into one, just because of time constraints, and so they would maybe do something like that. But other than that, it was all based on real, true stories. And that dang film did extremely well. Think about it. This was before cable, and so you only had 3 networks. So if you had 80 or 90 million people watching TV any night, you were going to get, even a stiff would probably get 15 million. And we got like 30 million plus the first time, and then it aired a second time, and we even had more, probably closer to 38 or 39, almost 40 million. That's a lot of eyeballs in one night, 2 nights as it turned out. So our lives were greatly impacted by that movie.
To this day, whenever I see Bruce Davidson, who played you in the movie, whether I see him in an old Seinfeld rerun or on X-Men, I think, hey, that's Dean.
We kind of looked very similar, and he's such a fine actor. He's kind of unappreciated in his industry, but I mean, he's still working and he still does great stuff, but he's been nominated lots of times for stuff that he's done. Really great guy, and I was thrilled that he played my part. Jan's part was played by
Richard Hatch.
Richard Hatch, and Richard also is really, really good. The 2 of them were extraordinary. They really did a really, really neat job. And I was there every day that they filmed, and the director would let me kind of sit in front of them, and if I saw something, I was allowed to ask it to be changed or go in a different direction. And the actors all liked that too. They wanted it to be as authentic as you could possibly do it. So everybody really cared about making that movie, and for a television movie, it really turned out really good.
When that came out, did you have any idea when it was being made that maybe this is a vehicle where America is going to rediscover and fall in love with Jan and Dean all over again, and we're going to go out on the road, and we're going to tour, and we're going to be out on the road for years to come?
Had no idea, but I was sure that at least a lot of people were going to see it. Whether or not that would translate into us continuing to do music, I wasn't sure. I was surprised. I was surprised how well that film did in terms of numbers and the right demographics. As you know, Mike Love, I got Mike. Actually, I asked all the Beach Boys, and only Mike and Bruce wanted to do it. Dennis said we couldn't afford him. I said, okay, Dennis. We were good friends. I forgave him, but he would have been great. But so Mike and Bruce did it, and even after the first airing, they were out working as usual. They like to work. And Mike started calling me at my graphic design studio, telling me how he was feeling the reaction of that movie. He said that people would ask every once in a while about Jan and Dean, but it wasn't all that often. And then as soon as that movie aired, he said everybody wanted to know about us, asking them questions about us, and whether or not we were going to get back together again and ever perform again. And after a couple of months of this, Mike called me up one day and just said, you have to see if you can put it back together again, at least even see if Jan is capable of doing at least 3 or 4 songs. And if he could do that, Mike invited us on a tour that they were about to do. And we would just be their guests, come out towards the end of their set, do the 3 biggest Jan and Dean hits, and then do Barbara Ann on the encore, and see how it worked. And, by the way, they had their own airplane.
Oh, that was nice.
I'd never been on a private jet before.
Wow.
And so all of a sudden we're a part of this. I think it was a spring tour, as I remember, kind of a spring break. And we went out for, I think at least 8 to 10 days and flew around in a private jet. Had a terrific time. One of the first shows we did, if not the first, was, and mind you, we really hadn't done hardly anything in 13 years. And all of a sudden, we are on stage with the Beach Boys at Three Rivers Stadium with about 80,000 people. That was pretty dang cool.
Wow. I mean, and good therapy for Jan, being able to perform again. Very nice. Well, Dean, we have gone on here for a lot longer than I would think, and we could go on for a lot longer. I haven't even touched on the stories in your book about Charles Manson or playing or playing football with Elvis.
What's that L? Yeah.
I mean, people have got to get the book, Surf City: The Jan and Dean Story by Dean Torrence. What you do right now is you put it on your Christmas list right now.
Yeah.
Yes.
$17 or something like that.
No,
not expensive, for gosh sake.
And well worth it. Well worth it. Now, I got to ask you in closing here, what are you doing these days down in Surf City?
Well, Surf City. I'd still probably work at least every other weekend. 2 Saturdays ago, I did work with the Beach Boys at a private party, $70,000 private party. So I work with them. I've already worked with them maybe 6 or 7 times this year. I also did all of the graphics for this year's 50-year anniversary of Good Vibrations. Every year, Mike has a whole thing that he does where he has the thing for each year's tour is a 50-year anniversary of something. They've had so many records that, my God, he can go on for the next 50 years. But this year it was Good Vibrations, and then I did the one for Fun, 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 and California Girls, and Surfing USA. I don't know what the next 50-year thing is. You'd probably know. But you'll come up with something.
I haven't talked to Mike in quite some time, so you'd probably know more than I would.
Oh, okay.
So.
You keep track of those records and when they were on the charts. So I'm trying to figure out what he had in 19.
So that'd be 1967. Wild Honey is one of my favorites from that year.
Wild Honey, that's probably what I'll do.
That's
your anniversary, Wild Honey, and that's a great title, actually.
And it's a great tune, one that we play here on Kisn. But I bet you no other oldies station around the country has the guts to play it because all these oldies stations are corporate now, and they have to play.
So I hear.
They have to play 250 songs, and that's about it. But that's a story for another day. Dean, thank you so much for your time. It's an honor for me to be able to talk to you. Like I've said, I've been a Jan and Dean fan for as long as I can remember. I'm the youngest of 4 kids, and I remember when one of my oldest, I think it was my oldest brother, bought The Little Old Lady from Pasadena. And when they moved out, I'm the youngest, so when they moved out, I kept all the records. I still have that original copy of The Little Old Lady from Pasadena, and it's gray. It's been played so much over the years.
Oh, my gosh.
But I will never get rid of it. Songs like that, they just, they're amazing memories, and I think I speak for all Kissin' listeners to thank you and Jan for creating such amazing memories.
Well, we sure had a good time doing it, and so thanks to the fans, we had a terrific time and a great run. And I'm just blessed that I got involved in 60s rock and roll because it's just, it'll never, ever happen again in terms of that kind of music or even the early 60s. It was a special time. I'm so lucky to have been a part of it.
Do you have a website where people can go and check out your stuff and where you might be and some of the graphics that you've talked about, things like that?
Yeah, jananddean.com, and it's not an ampersand, and it's, because I guess that doesn't work. So it's jananddean, jananddean.com. I designed every page of it. It's a huge website. It's got more than anybody would ever want to know about, including the graphics. It's got a Kitty Hawk section, which is the name of my graphics company. Also, anybody who's interested can also type in surfcityusa.com and see Huntington Beach, California. Huntington Beach, California, trademarked, along with my help, trademarked the name city, and it is the official nickname of Huntington Beach. And we do all sorts of marketing campaigns using the title Surf City. So surfcityusa.com. If you want to see beach pictures, that's kind of fun, too.
Very nice. The book is Surf City, The Jan and Dean Story by Dean Torrence. Once again, an amazing read, fantastic stories in there. We've just scratched the surface here in the past hour or so. Dean, thanks again for your time, and thanks for all the rock and roll.
Rich, absolutely my pleasure, and thanks so much for the call. Hi, this is Dean Torrence of Jan and Dean, and don't touch that dial or you'll miss some great musical memories right here on KISN.
Johnny's original Montevilla Barbershop supports real oldies on Kissin' Radio. Johnny's is an old-fashioned 50s-style barbershop in the heart of Montevilla at 7828 Southeast Start. Johnny's is open Tuesday through Saturday from 10 to 6, by appointment from 10 to 3, with walk-ins from 3 to 6. The phone number for an appointment is 503-516-7888. 503-516-7888. Johnny is also on the web at johnnythebarber.com. That's johnnythebarber.com. Johnny's original Montevilla Barbershop.
Ride the big adventure. Ride the wild surf.
In Hawaii, there's a place known as Waimea Bay where the best surfers in the world come to stay. Ride, ride, ride the wild surf. Ride, ride, ride the wild surf.
From the Kaha to Sunset Beach, from the Banzai Pipeline to Waimea Bay.
The surf-pounding days and the pulse-pounding nights of the fast-action surf set who look for kicks with a cool desperation and love the same way.
Fabian, Shelley Fabre, Tab Hunter, Barbara Eaton, Peter Brown, Susan Hart, Tim Mitchum, and the world's champion surfers in wild Hawaii.
Ride, ride,
Ride ride the wild surf. The big excitement from Columbia Pictures in color.